60-year-old Daniel Harper, a man who had faced countless challenges in life but always stood strong, was enjoying a simple day with his 7-year-old grandson, Jake. They had planned a visit to the park and a trip to buy Jake a new toy. Jake, full of excitement, clung tightly to his grandfather's hand, chattering about all the fun they would have. Daniel smiled warmly, his heart full as he listened to his grandson's innocent joy. Their peaceful walk took a terrifying turn as they entered a deserted street. From around the corner, a group of young men, their eyes glazed and dangerous from drug use, approached. One of them shouted aggressively, "Hey, old man, hand over everything you've got." Daniel instinctively pulled Jake behind him and said firmly, "What are you doing? There's a child here, don't scare him." But his words fell on deaf ears. When Daniel resisted, one of the young men shoved him to the ground with brutal force. They snatched his bag and tore the money from his pockets. In the chaos, one of the attackers pulled out a knife and plunged it into Daniel's leg. He collapsed in pain, clutching his bleeding wound. Little Jake knelt beside his grandfather, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Grandpa, please, someone help," he cried out desperately. But the street was eerily quiet, and the city seemed to turn its back on them. The young men, laughing and cursing, disappeared into the distance. Jake's cries echoed in the empty street as Daniel lay motionless on the cold ground. Their pleas for help met with silence. Daniel was losing blood rapidly from his leg. Little Jake cried out desperately, "Help us! My grandpa is hurt! Please, someone help!" His small voice echoed down the empty street, but no one emerged from the nearby houses. Occasionally, a curtain would shift, and someone would glance out a window, only to look away and retreat inside. The city seemed to have abandoned them. Jake knelt by his grandfather, trying to press his tiny hands against the bleeding wound. "Grandpa, please hold on. I'll find help," he sobbed, tears streaming down his cheeks. But Daniel, his voice faint from pain, whispered, "Jake, don't leave me. Stay right here. Don't go anywhere." Jake's wide, innocent eyes locked onto his grandfather's face, filled with fear and confusion. "But no one is helping us. No one even sees us," he cried, his small body trembling. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb and stopped. A young man stepped out, his sharp eyes immediately taking in the dire scene. It was Barron Trump, returning home from a charity event. Unable to ignore what he saw, he hurried over to Daniel and Jake. Barron knelt beside Daniel, his expression serious and focused. "Sir, don't worry. I'm calling for help right now," he said with determination. Pulling out his phone, he dialed emergency services and ensured an ambulance was on its way. Jake, his voice quivering, pleaded through his tears, "That's my grandpa. Can you save him?" Barron placed a comforting hand on Jake's small shoulder. "I'll do everything I can. We'll get through this together," he assured him, his voice steady and calming. When the ambulance arrived moments later, Barron personally helped the medics lift Daniel onto a stretcher. Seeing Jake's panic, Barron gently guided him to his car. "I'll take you to the hospital," he said softly. As they drove, Jake's voice wavered with fear. "Will my grandpa be okay?" he asked, his eyes filled with worry. Barron looked at him with unwavering resolve. "I promise you, we'll make sure he's okay," he said firmly. At the hospital, the doctors quickly treated Daniel's wounds, stitching up his leg and stabilizing his condition. Once Daniel was settled in a hospital room, Barron entered and sat by his bedside. "Sir," he said, his tone gentle but serious, "who did this to you? Please tell me everything." Lying on the hospital bed, Daniel began speaking in a weak but determined voice, his weary eyes focused on Barron's steady and compassionate face. "Mr. Trump, I have cancer," he began, taking a shaky breath. "My body is failing me, little by little. But through it all, there's one thing I've never given up on, making my grandson Jake happy. Today, I just wanted to buy him a toy and take him to the park, but those young men..." He paused, his voice trembling. Tears started streaming down his face. Barron listened intently as Daniel continued, swallowing hard. "Those young men, they stopped us in the street. They hurled insults at me, demanded my money. I tried to shield Jake, keeping him behind me, trying to protect him. But they didn't care. They shoved me to the ground, yelling and laughing. They punched and kicked me while Jake screamed, 'Leave my grandpa alone.'" Daniel's voice cracked as he struggled to go on. "But no one came to help." His voice grew fainter as he recounted the worst moment. And then one of them, he stabbed me in the leg with a knife. I'll never forget that moment. The pain, the fear in Jake's eyes. He's just a little boy. He shouldn't have to see such things, to feel such fear. But there I was, helpless to stop it. Daniel paused to wipe his tears, though they kept falling. Jake screamed for help. He begged the people around us. "Help us, please," he cried. But no one even looked our way. Barron's face hardened, his jaw tightening, though his eyes remained filled with empathy. "No one helped you?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Daniel shook his head slowly. No one stopped. The street was full of people, but we were completely alone. As I lay there bleeding, all I could think about was Jake. Seeing him so scared, that was worse than the pain, worse than the blood. But then, you came. Daniel locked eyes with Barron. You showed up and you saved us. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. I don't know you, but something in me tells me you're the right person. Thank you, Mr. Trump. You didn't leave my grandson behind. You didn't let me die." At that moment, little Jake stepped closer to Barron, his small hands clutching Barron's much larger one. His face, still marked by fear, held a glimmer of hope as he looked up at him. "Mr. Trump," Jake said in a trembling voice, "I was so scared for my grandpa. I thought I was going to lose him. But you saved him." "Thank you." Barron knelt down slightly to meet Jake's gaze, placing a gentle hand on his small shoulder. "Jake, you're such a brave boy," he said. "What you did for your grandpa means everything. You stayed with him, you didn't give up, and that takes real courage. Now it's my turn to help you. I promise, you're not alone anymore." Taking a deep breath, Barron turned back to Daniel. "What happened to you is unacceptable," he said firmly. "Justice must be served. Those young men didn't just harm you, they violated the trust and safety of this community. I will make sure this changes, Mr. Harper. That's my promise to you." The room fell silent. In that quiet moment, the determination in Barron's words, the gratitude in Daniel's eyes, and the mixture of fear and hope in Jake's face filled the air. It wasn't just a rescue, it was the beginning of a fight for justice. Barron immediately contacted the police, urging them to conduct a thorough investigation into the incident. With the help of security cameras and witness statements, the attackers were quickly identified. The young men who had assaulted Daniel were arrested and faced serious charges in court. Barron closely followed the case, ensuring Daniel's rights were upheld and involving a team of lawyers to support him throughout the process. During a charity event, Barron took the stage alongside Daniel and Jake. Turning to the crowd, he said, "This story reveals how indifferent our society can sometimes be, but it also shows the power of solidarity and justice. People like Daniel and Jake are the true heroes of this country. Today, we stand together to ensure that justice has been served." Daniel shook Barron's hand firmly and said, "Thank you for not leaving me alone. If it weren't for you, I might not be here today." Jake, smiling with a glimmer of hope in his eyes, added, "Mr. Trump, you're my hero." This event was not just a victory for Daniel and Jake, but also a wake-up call for society to become more compassionate and attentive. Justice prevailed, and thanks to Barron Trump's compassion, an entire family's life was saved. This story became a reminder to everyone of how vital kindness and solidarity are in making the world a better place. This story reminds us that there's a spark of goodness in all of us. If this story touched your heart and you want more people to understand the importance of kindness and solidarity, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can make the world a better and more just place.